actors that make it easy or not easy on the set? Is that what you'd like to know about? I mean, I think, people say, well, gosh, those method actors, they're really tough. It depends on how they conduct themselves. Some method actors put it on like a jacket right before they step onto the set. They've been preparing off to the side, and that's one way. Like Michael Fox, he'd be in a conversation, we'd roll the camera, he'd step onto his mark and jump into his character, and we'd call cut, and he'd jump out and finish the conversation. He just put it on and off. He was used to it. Then there are people, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, except that it costs a lot of time and energy for people around him. I have never seen anybody assume a role the way Jim Carrey did in Man on the Moon.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Ever. Jim Carrey disappeared in the first week of prep and came back at the wrap party. No kidding.
Yeah, well, I watched the documentary Jim and Andy, and that was incredible.
And that was maybe a fifth of what went on.
Wow.
Those are the stuff he wouldn't be liable for. He could show that stuff.
Wow, that is.
I honestly think it changed him. I've never seen anybody inhabit a role like that. Dustin Hoffman would inhabit roles. He's very famous for it, and it's true. A lot of actors do, but they do it, as you were, alluding to, they do it in a wide range of ways. Difficult people usually have a reason for being difficult. If you can solve their difficulty, you can calm them down, and then they can get back to focusing on what they're doing.
Sure, yeah. Jim Carrey went so far as to visit Andy Kaufman. Like, he was hanging out with Andy Kaufman's family, things like that. Was it like his sisters or something?
He had them on the set. He brought them to the set.
Really paid off, though, it felt like you were watching the embodiment of Andy Kaufman in that movie, so...
From what I remember, that was the time when he said he just wanted everyone to take him serious as a serious actor, and that's why he went for it. At least that's what I remember at the time.
Well, I've heard he goes for it on every film. That's the only one I did with him. But honestly, I've never seen anything like that.
So it's definitely no secret the stereotype of big actors kind of becoming increasingly difficult as their star rises. But I'm more interested in hearing about if there's a particular A-lister that surprised you by how humble and grounded they remained in their success.
Well, the first name that comes to mind is Pullman. Just an incredible guy, hard to describe because he had so many facets. But I met him on Absence of Malice, and you would have never known that he was starring a film. I mean, he was hanging out with the crew. He's making popcorn for everybody. He was pulling jokes on the set, and not untimely jokes. I mean, they would be timed right, so it wouldn't take away from anything. But he was kind and thoughtful, and I was surprised by that. And then I got a call from him a couple of years later at my house. And I thought it was a prank call. I thought somebody was, screwing around with me until I realized it really was him. He had gotten my number from Sidney Pollack and was asking me to be his AD on this film that he was going to direct. I was completely blown away. I didn't even know he'd been watching me, but I guess he had been. So I went off and did this film with him. And he was exactly the same guy directing and starring. It was a movie called Harry and Son, which wasn't a particularly big deal, but it was probably one of the coolest experiences I ever had on a film. And he's the godfather he and Joanne are godfather to my son. He got me involved. He still owes me a lot of money for this, but he got me involved in race car driving. The same way he hooked Cruise into it. He was a stand-up guy. And as sweet as can be.
Find us in all these links. It's coming up right now.
Why don't you subscribe? It'll last longer.